Okay. So here's an article from Fox News that I thought was pretty fun. Bernie Sanders, enormously insulting if Biden ignores progressives in his administration. Now, I want to make this abundantly clear from the get-go. Let's analyze the 2020 election. Centrists lost. Democrats lost in the House. Now, they kept the majority, thankfully, right? God. But they lost a lot of seats. Now, who lost those districts? Democrats that were more to the right, more conservative Democrats were more likely to lose. I believe every elected member of Congress who endorsed the Green New Deal or Medicare for All won re-election. Now, this does not count races of those who were not incumbents. So you can make the claim incumbent advantage, all that. I'm open on that. We can have a conversation on that. Now, let's look at Georgia. How did Joe Biden win Georgia? After George Floyd was murdered on live television in front of the entire world, there was a boost in Democratic registrations in a lot of cities like Atlanta, right? In cities like Minneapolis and Minnesota, right? But I want to focus on Atlanta because that's in Georgia. How many votes did Joe Biden win by? Not that many in Georgia. Joe Biden only won Georgia because of the voter turnout of African American youths in response to the Black Lives Matter protests. That is the only reason Joe Biden won Georgia. Now, we can extrapolate and say that those might be the only reasons why Joe Biden won Wisconsin. Who knows, right? Georgia is a surefire bet. I am willing to say with 99.9% certainty that Joe Biden would not have won Georgia if it were not for the left, if it were not for Black Lives Matter, if it were not for the defund the police movement. But that's not what centrists want you to think. Centrists want you to think that the left is bad, that they're evil, and that they are more of a liability than they are of any help whatsoever. Now, if that were the case, then again, remind me why it's the conservative incumbent Democrats that lost their seats and not the left-wing incumbent Democrats that lost their seats. Tell me that. Tell me that. I would love to know your thesis. So let's read. Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, leaders of the Democratic Party's left wing, I disagree with that characterization, are at risk of being excluded from the senior ranks of President-elect Joe Biden's administration as the incoming president balances the demands of the party's progressive base against the political realities of a narrowly divided Senate. 72% of the country, not of Democrats, of the country, including Republicans, support a government-run healthcare system. 72% of the, not Democrat, of the country support a universal healthcare system. Not of a public option, of a universal government-funded healthcare system. 72% of the country. This is not a fringe group that supports Medicare for all, right? 60+% of the country supports the Green New Deal. This is not a fringe ideology. This is a mainstream ideology. This is an ideology. If you were to go out on the street and ask them, hey, do you prefer dying because you can't get, a doctor's appointment because you don't have money and you have to pay for your foods, for your children's food? Or would you rather go to the doctor every 3 months and make sure that you don't develop cancer because you get preemptive screenings? I don't know. Most people would say, I'd rather get those preemptive screenings. Right? So this is not a fringe. This is not, there's like a couple radicals out there that think this. This is the mainstream, not of the Democratic Party, of the entire country. This is not the mainstream of the Democratic voters. This is the mainstream of the entire country. Now, if you want to extrapolate, this is the mainstream of the entire world. Universal health care is a staple in almost every other country on the planet. Why? Because it's a common sense, no shit, policy position. Yet, these guys are convinced that it's fringe. It seems to me pretty clear that progressive views need to be expressed within a Biden administration, Sanders told the Associated Press. It would be, for example, enormously insulting if Biden put together a team of rivals. And there's some discussion that that's what he intends to do, which might include Republicans and conservative Democrats, but which ignore the progressive community, I think that would be very, very unfortunate, is what Bernie Sanders has to say. Biden told reporters Thursday that he has finalized his choice for Treasury Secretary and said the pick would be someone who will be accepted by all elements of the Democratic Party, moderates and progressives. We'll see about that. He sidestepped a specific question about Sanders joining the cabinet as he walked off stage. Waleed Shahed, a spokesman for the Sanders-aligned Justice Democrats, said his group and others recognize that not every member of the administration is going to be progressive. That's not who Joe Biden is. He said progressives simply want adequate representation in the cabinet. If 72% of the country wants a universal health care system, I believe that 72% of the presidential administration should also want a universal health care system. That is my ideology. That is what I think. Now, that's not going to happen, but that's what I think should happen. We are advocating for them to be included, but we also have backup choices, he said, of Warren and Sanders. Now, again, I don't necessarily think Sanders should join the administration. I'm skeptical of whether or not he's more useful in the Senate or the Biden cabinet, right? I'm skeptical of that, right? However, whoever that should be in Secretary of Labor should be someone who is at least Sanders aligned, in my opinion. Sanders noted that Vermont Governor Phil Scott has promised to fill a prospective vacancy with an independent who caucuses with Democrats, just as Sanders does. Governor Scott is a moderate Republican. He is not a right-wing Republican, Sanders said. Now, I am very skeptical of whether or not he's telling the truth, and I'm very skeptical of the notion of what a moderate Republican is. Personally, I don't believe in those, but still, Phil Scott has on record said this. So, Sanders said he understands that this is a progressive state, and the wise and appropriate thing to do would be, as an interim appointment before the special election took place, would be to appoint somebody whose views were consistent with mine. Now, this is going to really trigger me here, so watch out. Choosing Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, who represent the far left, and in Bernie's case, an openly socialist view of the world, is not the leadership that the American people just voted for. Now, again, why did Biden win Georgia? 72% of the country supports universal health care. Not of the Democrats. Again, I need this to be understood. Not 72% of Democrats, 72% of the country. That means Republicans support a universal health care system. Republicans! They support universal health care too! Right? Think about that. It's not the leadership the American people voted for, said Jennifer Horn, a co-founder of the anti-Trump Lincoln Project that spent millions to support President Biden's presidential bid. I think Joe Biden understands that. Now, you have all these fucking liberal douchebags going out there saying, the Lincoln Project is great, they're anti-Trump, right? The Lincoln Project was not anti-Trump. They loved Trump. They didn't care if Trump won. The Lincoln Project, what they did was they saw the writing on the wall. They knew that the Democratic Party is going to be moving further left, and they want to get a piece of the cake. They want to get a slice of that pie. If we can make a splash a couple years before the 2020 election, we might have a say in who's in a Biden cabinet. We might have a say in who's in the transition team. That's what the Lincoln Project was about, is getting their disgusting, offensive, and murderous paws inside of the Biden transition team and administration. That's what it was about. Bernie Sanders represents the far left. Bernie Sanders has garnered the most fundraising of any presidential candidate in history. The far left. 72% of the country supports universal health care. The far left. This is not a fringe group of like 10 people, right, in a hippie fucking like subgroup, right, that have this like club that they do like bonfires and tree hugging sessions over in like California. This is a mainstream proposal that every single state's population agrees with. 72% of the fucking country supports universal health care. You have states like Arizona legalizing marijuana. You have states like Florida supporting a $15 minimum wage, yet voting for Donald Trump. This is not a fringe far left group. This is the mainstream, not just of America, but of the entire planet Earth. This is a mainstream talking point. Yet these far right radicals in the Lincoln Project, who actually do represent a fringe minority of less than 1% of people that are wealthy, business, media elite class cringers who want to try to influence presidential politics to get money in their media firms or lobbyist adventures, those are a fringe group of far right or radical centrists. Okay? That is reality. 72% of American people support a universal government-funded healthcare system. If it were fringe, explain those numbers. But this is the Biden cabinet. This is the Biden transition team. We're in for a whammy.